Representing the old colors here. Just finished Pyre, Supergiant Games' newest mind-boggling masterpiece. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they're just blowing everyone else out of the water so consistently. And like with such wildly varying offerings every single time, like wildly varying offerings. Like the Bastion was like an isometric little like just action-y game with a really incredible story. Transistor was fucking Parasite Eve, and with just this amazing visual audio experience. Like, that game is worth it just for the visuals, if nothing else. If absolutely nothing else. But then also the gameplay was really, like, holy shit. Like, I don't have enough brain cells to comprehend all the levels that this combat system is fucking functioning on. And then this, where it's literally just NBA Jam. Like, insert any, like, arcadey sports game, like Space Jam, or Mega Man Soccer, or River City Dodgeball, or any of those. And it's like, oh, who could have seen that fucking coming? Like, people always had that dumb thing where they say, like, Transistor is like Bastion, and it wasn't. Literally, the only thing they had in common was a fixed camera, in which case you could just as easily say it was like Resident Evil. You know? But, like, each game has done different things, but there were comparisons that could be raised between Bastion and Transistor. Both of them were from an isometric perspective. Both of them were kind of about exploring this setting that it was in, and both of them were more about the thematic resonance of what the story represented, more so than the actual events or the characters who were taking part of it. Not that those were, like, lacking, but that's just not where the priority was. It was on, like theme and message and gameplay. And this game, like, it has bombastic gameplay, but it kind of departs. Both in terms of, like, what it is. I mean, it's literally a sports game, but it's also, like, Bastion was a game about moving on from a tragedy. Like, the world had been completely obliterated, and any efforts to cling to what had come in the past, or what, like, clinging to life as it once was, resulted only in tragedy for literally everyone involved. And the only way to, and like, by trying to start it all over, the same mistakes get made. Like, literally, that's the entire point of that ending, is the same mistakes will keep being made over and over again the same way they always were. And not in a positive way. Like, personally, I'm that person where I'm like, I like who I am right now, so if I could do it all over again, I'd do the same goddamn thing, because I want to end up back where I am, because I like where I'm at. But, you know, most people go, oh, if I could do it all over again, I'd do something different because this sucks. Especially when the thing you're talking about, this sucks, is the end of the world. But it's almost like a causality loop where, no, you're just fucked no matter what you do. Even if you have the best of intentions, and even if you know what you're trying to avoid, you're just gonna keep repeating those same mistakes. You have to let go. You have to let it go and move on with your life and try and find new purpose and new meaning and new opportunities for happiness in the here and now. Don't live in the past, build a better future. That's what Bastion was about, thematically. And Transistor was kind of confusing. It was very Dark Soulsian, you know, or Silent Hillish in its. You're not supposed to take any of this literally whatsoever. Even like the setting itself, arguably, could be said to not be a literal physical place. And everything that you see and all that you're running around with and all the people you interact with are representations. Because it's like a computer program thing. And like thematically it had all of these it was actually kind of a fun twist on like typical cyberpunk like conventions where it's like all like day-to-day life is mandated by the majority, which is a really interesting concept, but it was actually like really positive, and the only reason things got fucked up was because certain people decided to set themselves apart and above everyone else. They started thinking like, oh, we want to be in control of this instead of letting it be. It was actually kind of weirdly optimistic in that it was like things were at their best when everyone just kind of did whatever they wanted and, you know, put their own vote in. And things kind of worked out for the best in the short and long term when everyone just kind of like went their own way with things. And by these ambitious individuals saying like we want to put ourselves above and lead over it, that's where the ruin came from, and everything kind of gets reset back to Factory Zero. And then it had a really weird, depressing ending where everyone dies. It was almost like the game, the story of Transistor was what happened immediately before the beginning of Bastion, where it was everything that led up to the end of the world, and then Bastion was everything that happened after the end of the world. So Transistor thematically is about like kind of giving into despair a little bit, like kind of like fuck, everything's falling apart. There's nothing you can really do about it. Screw it. Like, and it ended with like you're given this godlike power to literally reinvent the world in your own image, and you decide instead to abandon this like empty, not sanitary. Ah, shit, I can't think of the word. It's the thing hospitals are. Sterile. Holy shit. Literally just the camera. Like abandoning this empty, sterile world and decide, like, I don't want to be God. I want to be with the person that I care about. And, you know, you can interpret that ending in multiple different ways, but either way, I still feel like it's reinforcing the theme because Red literally finds herself in the position that the Camarilla. I don't think that's what they're called. I'm thinking of Vampire the Masquerade, but I'm just going to call them the Camarilla. She finds herself in the position that the Camarilla wanted to be in, to literally have control to rewrite the entire setting however they saw fit, and she rejected it, and instead, like, just, you know, surrendered herself to whatever you want to say her fate ended up being. But then Pyre is, like, again, those were stories about the theme and about the message and about the setting. Pyre sets itself apart by being very character-centric. It has an interesting setting, and it has very pronounced themes, and it is kind of about the end of the world, but in a much more metaphorical and much more optimistic way. But I would say the scope has been narrowed to such a degree that it's like it really does. It almost can't even be considered the same kind of story because it's very much about the characters that you meet and interact with and engage with. Like in Bastion, the entire game was narrated to you, and you never actually talked to any of the characters. You're just told, oh, this is what they talked about. And then he said something like that. You never actually hear anyone talk until, like, the very ending, and then, even then, it's only two characters, and your character is completely, like, the kid. doesn't have any insight you want to have onto his character is purely interpretive. You know, like, it's like, what's Gordon Freeman's character, right? Surely you could say any amount of things about who Gordon Freeman is as a person, but there's nothing actually in there. There's no words in the script. Like, it's all completely derived from your own subjective view of his character. And likewise, Transistor, while having the prominence being on its two characters, and the main character, Red, having her own independent personality with her own, like, journey that she went on that is actually shown to you with words and through her actions that are commented on by other characters, it's still not really a story about Red and her character, let alone anyone else. Like, she just does things, but the story's not like an examination of her trials and tribulations. It's just kind of integrated into the rest of that theme. Pyre is basically a dating sim. You meet all of these different interesting characters. You find out, okay, this is what their internal conflict is. This is their every character has a motivation, an internal conflict, and an arc that they undergo. Every single character, like, there's like 9 or 10 characters, like, real actual, like, mainline characters that you interact with, and then there's a whole bunch of other characters who also have their own shit going on, but you have a much less direct means of actually influencing their development. But, like, the Nightwings, from the fact that, they all talk to you. Like, all of them have, like, the dialogue. This has to have, like, 700 times more actual dialogue in it than any of Supergiant Games' previous games put together. Because, like, I totally get why they didn't voice act it either. It does kind of continue that trend of here's the audacious narrator, but what's funny is the narrator actually has, like, an antagonistic relationship with you this time around. But you get what I mean, where it's very character focused. The story is you can kind of self-write it. You can decide through your own choices with how you interact with these characters, and whether or not you want to interact with characters, how their story unfolds. Like, the one that I got invested with the most was probably the Harpy Girls, because I really wanted her to resolve her stupid bullshit with her sister, and I really tried to, like, wrap things around to try and, like, get a happy ending there. That's me. I always try to get a happy ending. I guess you could arguably say it kind of worked out, but... And I actually felt bad in retrospect, because one of the characters I, like, just abandoned right off the bat. Later I thought about it, and I was like, man, probably should have held on to that character for a little bit more. There was more going on there than I had the time to learn about. My favorite character was Sir Gilman. Like, far and away, Sir Gilman's the best character. I want plushies. I want plushies of Tizo, too. Tizo kicked ass. All of the characters were so fucking strong. All of them. Even the ones that I wasn't super big on. They all were, like, this whole game was really well written. Like, even your own character has more of an actual distinct personality, in that it's what you can designate. Like I mentioned in the video I did on it, where I was like, you can decide how you feel about things, but those things are constant and true regardless of what you pick. You can read regardless of what you say when you're asked if you can read. And you can also kind of decide what your backstory is, but your character is really vague. Like, intentionally so. Not a blank slate, but it's kind of meant to be you, which is also unique, because the Kid and Red were their own characters. They weren't audience surrogates. even like devoid of character as the kid might have been, and uninteractive a character as Red might have been, they were both their own characters, and you were just controlling them. Whereas what's funny is it's almost it's this fun inversion where the reader, you are the reader, and you decide what is the deal with the reader, and you are only ever in control of the reader. But the reader, by their very nature, is non-combative and oversees the combative characters. You, as the reader, can't take part in the rites for reasons that are implied to be because you're kind of crippled a little bit, but also could just be because the readers can't do that. That's totally not true, actually. Fucking Sandalwood's a reader and he can take part. Yeah, I think it's heavily all but stated, unless I'm misremembering, in which case it's just straight out said word for word. The reason you don't take part in the rites is because you're crippled. Like, floating down that river fucked you the goddamn shit up and you just can't do anything. In fact, one of the choices you can pick for your backstory is you're a crippled scholar. So you could have been gimped from before you even showed up in the downside, which is a great name when I think about it, because it's supposed to be Australia, the down under. Get it? Yeah, like, because of that, because of, like, again, it does have a really incredible setting that's really interesting and probably has even more lore to dig into than even Transistor did. And Transistor was very Dark Soulsian in how it detailed its setting and characters. I feel like when the wiki page for Pyre really starts boiling up, it's going to be pretty fucking extensive and long-winded. Oh, man. Either, I hope, Supergiant Games makes some version of the book as a thing you can buy, or else that's going to be an interesting cosplay challenge. One that would not be impossible, but man, that's a good one. That's a good thing to keep an eye out for at the cons from now on. Is who's got the book and how good is it? Are the pages black? Does the ink is the ink shimmery? It's not impossible, but man, would that be time consuming and probably expensive, but totally worth it. The thing, like, of course, like, the lore is really extensive. There's literally a book. There's literally, like, a 200-page book that's, here's all the fucking backstory for this game we came up with. And, like, and the downside, like, the world that you run around in is really just gorgeous to look at. It still, again, has that thematic resonance of, it's all kind of meant to be metaphorical. Like, for one thing, the downside is literally just hell. Like, it's Australia in that the empirical society is just casting all their inmates down there to just fuck you, deal with it. You're in a prison colony now. But metaphorically, it's hell. You get thrown in there by a theocracy who designates you as a sinner. You arrive there via a river. The river Styx. You know, not by a ferryman, but just thrown into the river and half drown your way down there. It has 9 layers. There are 9 screens that you progress from where you first arrive to the final screen. There are 9 screens, 9 layers of hell, circles of hell. It is filled with imps, and being there for too long turns you into a literal demon with giant fucking horns. It's explicitly stated that it almost seems by design everything in there is meant to make it as suffering as possible, but not kill you. Like, it's always said, like, oh, it's fraught with danger and you could die at any moment, but you never actually hear about anyone dying. It's very, very, I think there's like 2 or 3 characters total that you even hear about, oh, they died. And one of them killed himself. So, the fact that you can kill yourself in hell is an interesting theological question, by the way, but, like, the purpose is to prolong and exacerbate the suffering of everyone involved, not necessarily to kill them. And it is littered with the fucking carcasses of the elder gods, which isn't from any religion, it's just fucking metal as shit. That is some cover of an ACD album shit right there, right? Like, imagine you go to hell, and while talking to Satan, you look out the window, and it's the fucking skeleton of Cthulhu. You would not be surprised to see that in hell. That is some metal fucking shit right there. So, oh, and the only, and journeying through it, you gain enlightenment. Like Dante, traveling through the Inferno, you're gaining a, more expanded view of the world and yourself within it. Literally, instead of leveling up, you gain enlightenment. Journeying through hell gives you enlightenment both into yourself and where you fit into the world, and there is a religious competition where you're given the potential chance for salvation by offering up faith and penance to the divine, and it's overseen by a pair of literal angels. It's hell. It's the downside is just fucking hell. It is a literal and metaphorical and figurative and thematic hell that you have to go to and then return from in order to make the world a better place. And the fact that, like, religion is such a huge theme in the game with the 8 scribes and the book is just a Bible. It's just the Bible. It's literally the religious holy doctrine, and only the people who can hear the voice of the divine are able to read it. Like, it could not be more heavy-handed when you actually sit there and think about it. Like, literally, you're hearing the voice of not God, but, like, pretty much the Pope for all intents and purposes. Like, the scribes themselves are kind of gods, but not, because they were mortal. It's got like, it's not explicitly Christianity, it's sort of like theology in general, right? And the metaphorical concept of hell, as, you know, is kind of pop culturally understood. It's not supposed to be any single religion in particular, but it is religion, and it is hell, and it is definitely making a statement. Actually, rarely enough, and I think a good companion piece to Nier Automata, which was explicitly anti-religion, I think this game's actually kind of positive towards religion. It just goes like, the human institution of religious, like, authority is susceptible to corruption. And that's bad, but the teachings themselves and, like, the actual shit that's in that book and the intentions that it was written with were positive. And it's the fact that we've strayed away from those original intentions in the book that are the reason shit is so bad now. And the goal, by and large, is to overthrow the corrupt theocracy and institute a new, not religious, but yes, religious order that's closer to the intention of the teachings of the book. And there's also the fact that literacy is illegal, and the starting screen, like the press start, do you want to play the game screen, is a library that's on fire. It's church book burnings. The religious theocracy has outlawed literacy, and you're not allowed to talk the about the Bible or what's written in it. And if you can read, you're a sinner. To hell with you. Burn all the books. And then when your little revolution succeeds, hey, look, literacy is not only not illegal anymore, it's encouraged. Everyone should fucking read. Like, holy shit. Read this shit and make up your own mind about it. Like, it's actually kind of refreshing to see a game that's, like, so heavily about religion actually be kind of positive towards it. Actually be like, yeah, religion's cool, just don't be a fucking asshole. Like, that's the source of all shittiness. It helps that, in this game's case, the religion that it's centered around is, like, real. Like, you actually do witness miracles, and the pyre is a fucking burning bush and all that shit. Like, you're actually seeing evidence of the divine. You walk amidst the corpses of the elder gods which the divine had slain. And that actually fucking reinforces the theme of, like, the end of the world that I mentioned. Like, again, this game is about the end of the world, but more in a metaphorical way rather than a completely literal one, like what Transistor and Bastion. They were literally about the end of the world. This is metaphorically about the end of an era. It's the end of the age. And it's stated it's not the first time it's happened. Like, what was the 8 scribes really were just instituting a new age over what came before, and they slayed the religion that came before. I'm saying religion very heavily because it's just the elder gods. It's sort of like a metaphor for paganism, but not really. And again, it's basically just Cthulhu. Like, say, before the 8 scribes, the deific mandate over the land was the elder gods. For convenience, that's what I'm calling them. And the new gods, the 8 scribes, killed them, replaced them, and instituted their new divine overseeing of the world. And now, their age has come to an end. Just like the age before them had come to an end. And it's implied that the reason their age is coming into an end is because it's literally being snuffed out by the new age that is encroaching upon them, or by the resurfacing of the old age that they had snuffed out, reclaiming its place. It's kind of like, it's like the stars are getting snuffed out by the Titans' stars. But characters also speculate that the reason that's happening is because of the shit you're doing with the Nightwings. So I guess you could go either way with it. But definitely the point is, like, the world as we know it is over, and now the new world that is being shaped by the actions of your character and your companions is replacing that age. And again, metaphorically, but like in a positive way. Depending on the ending. I got a really good ending. I saved everyone that I cared about. Actually, kind of with the exception of one. Like, if there's one thing I would have done differently, but like, either way, I wouldn't have been happy with it because like, this game kind of puts you in a corner, and that my little Foxeh heart. I'm like, no, I wanted to get freedom for everybody, you know? I was like, come on. You know, maybe, I can headcanon it and be like, maybe one day we'll build that bridge, we'll build that stairway to heaven, we'll build that bridge to Australia and be able to go to the downside and liberate everyone down there. But, probably not. Again, it's Supergiant Games, so the message is probably just deal with it and move the fuck on. That really bummed me out, actually, because I was so invested, where I was like, yeah, everyone will get their freedom. Even the people that we're defeating, because, that's such an interesting concept, where you're in this competition against other groups that want freedom from the downside just as badly as you do, and arguably some of them deserve it just as much. Like, some characters are pieces of shit, and fuck them, but other characters like the Fate and, the Fate, the Accusers weren't that bad. They were, like, kind of dicks, but they didn't actually do anything wrong. And the Tempers were pretty cool guys. The Dissidents were really cool guys, but, like, they didn't even want their freedom, and that's why they were so cool about it. Because they were like, yeah, fuck it, I don't even want to go back to the Commonwealth. Like, ironically, they were, like, one of the best groups, and you feel no guilt about denying them their freedom whatsoever. Now, like, a handful of them were dicks. Like, fuck the Chastity and fuck the Withdrawn. You do not want to give those guys their freedom. But the Accusers weren't that bad. The Tempers weren't that bad. The Fate weren't that bad. The Pyre Hearts were kind of nothing. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is... It kind of made you feel guilty. Like, that's something that the characters themselves bring up, is like, you're fighting for your freedom, but by necessity, you gaining freedom means you have to take freedom away from someone else. And that's shitty. Like, that sucks. Why? No, I want everyone to be free. That's why I was that's why I was in on the plan. I was trying, like, yeah, we'll take over this shit, and we'll be like, fuck it, and just bring everyone back from exile. That's what I thought was gonna happen, but then, nah, son. Nah. No. But no. Ripe for replayability, because it's making me go like, what would have happened if I had, set this person free instead? Like, it's actually making me really curious about the concept of doing a run where none of the Nightwings go free. Where every single Nightwing stays in the downside together. I'm very curious about the potentialities of doing a playthrough like that. Because that'd be really interesting. Yeah, like those people who are like, ooh, my choices in video games, this is a game that's gonna make them pretty happy, because there's so much variability to what you can do. And again, I was very satisfied because everyone I wanted to get out, I managed to get them out. I got the original 3 bros out. I concluded as much as I could. I feel like there was probably still a little bit more that could be done with it, but considering the fucking time limit you were on, I did as much as I feel like I could reasonably been expected to with the Harpy, where, like, that sister was just not gonna wash the sand out of her vagina. But, I got him as close as could be hoped to have achieved, I think. And I set her free, and she was like, yo, thanks. I resolved Gilman's bullshit, where he's like, oh, I feel bad. And he was like, yo, I'm ready to go. The only thing I regret is, like, at the end, I chose to let myself go free. And if I could, that's one that I would kind of take back. Like, I feel like no matter what, I would have been to a minor degree a little bit like, that's not perfect. That's not the bet. Like, no matter what, you're not gonna get a 100% yay. This is entirely super satisfying to every reasonable degree. It all is like, yeah to that, No matter what you choose, you're gonna be like, would have been a little bit better if also I could have done this. And I'm being really vague. Like, the reason is because, like, I wanted to stick with Tizo. And also, to a degree, I feel like I didn't want to go back to the Commonwealth. You know, I kind of wanted to just say fuck it and stay in the downside and be like, freedom is not a location, it's a state of mind. And I wanted to stick with Tizo, but but then I also feel like Sandalwood, Bertrude, and Tizo, all the three of them staying in the downside together, is also a pretty cute little trio, and that like they all work well together down there. And I was like, what if you send Tizo to the? That would be fucking weird. It's making me like want to replay it with like the fucking skip all this text option. That's the one thing about this game that I'm a little bit about, is there's no New Game Plus, which is really unfortunate. Like, on the one hand, I get it. I get, because like the point of the story is like, nah. Like, I get it. But I want that New Game Plus. New Game Plus means that your game is automatically the best shit ever, and Bastion was really unique in that its New Game Plus was tied into the narrative, and Transistor's New Game Plus can just do whatever the fuck it wants, because that game's narrative is fucking confusing. This game, I get that you're like, it doesn't really make sense to have a New Game Plus. But then there's one line of dialogue that I feel like they wrote that and then later decided to not have a New Game Plus, where there's an option where a character's asking, like, how do you feel about everything that's happened so far? And you can say, I feel like all of this has happened before. And that feels like a New Game Plus dialogue option that they just left in. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But yeah, like, I would have done it, like, because I get if it's a pure No Game Plus and all of the characters keep their levels, I get not wanting to do that. I get not wanting to just be like, okay, here's an overpowered, fully leveled up, rank 5 team. Have fun sleepwalking through the game. But, okay, like, you and plus, enlightenment is like, there are flags for the characters' development that is tied to their level, which is really interesting. Literally, they level up as people while they level up their gameplay abilities. Integration. But, I think I would have been like, okay, don't carry over enlightenment then, but let me keep my trinkets. Let me keep the trinkets, and let me have access to all 12 Titan Stars right from the beginning. Yeah, but again, I also get that is thematic as well, because the stars get snuffed out as the Titan Stars start appearing. And I don't know, maybe the option to skip the first very, very linear handheld tutorial, right, like, have it start from the second cycle, you know? Maybe? I don't know. That's where the game kind of lets you off the rails. I would say the first third to half of the game is what I did in that video, and then a little bit after that, leading up to the first liberation ritual. And then the second 2/3 / second half of the game is you kind of get relative free reign, and you're just wandering around. Like, you can choose who you want to go and engage with, and who you choose to engage with and where you choose to go affects which characters develop, and you can interact with them and influence their development. And as the game goes on, you have less and less and less and less time to do all that with. And I'm very satisfied by what I managed to accomplish in that first playthrough. And it feels like they did design it in a way where it's like you aren't going to be able to do everyone's everything in one playthrough. And I get that. But that's also why I feel like there should have been a New Game Plus, because it's like, carry over those character stories. So the character stories I polished off, I won't like be at risk of repeating them and doing a bunch of stuff I already did. Like, leave that flag checked and be like, okay, like, that's resolved. Just so you can say, like, okay, like, all of the Nightwing's personal dramas have been fucking accomplished. I don't know, but then, like, how much variability is there? At what, like, I don't know. Game's too new, I'm guessing, but it would have been nice to at least carry over your trinkets and at least get the 12 Titans from the start, and being able to skip that really, really long initial build up to the first Liberation Ray. And also, I saw someone suggest the idea of a season mode, which would be fucking great. Like, literally just have, like, you know how when you get Madden or MLB, whatever, and you just, like, have a season mode where you're just playing games against other teams each season, and it's also, like, that would be so cool. And it would, you could even fit that into the lore, because one of the that fucking dog, the rock dog, his ending is, I'm just gonna turn the rights into a sport, and we're just gonna play the rights for fun. Literally, fuck the story, let's just play this sick-ass game and have fun with it. That would be cool. It would be cool to have a season mode where it's like, hypothetical end of the game, and you're just running around the downside, having organized tournaments with all of the other teams, and just fucking around with it. And that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Probably not something they're gonna even entertain the notion of doing, but it would be really fun to have a season mode type thing. And, like, I don't know, I just, some kind of mode where you can do, where you have kind of free reign and without the time restriction to do characters' stories is without, like, time constraints and distraction. Like, I'm thinking of, like, Danganronpa had a mode where it was literally, fuck it, just wander around and talk to everyone. I yearn for something like that, even though I know from, like, a game designer's perspective, you're like, no, just do it. Like, fuck you. And I'm like, I get that, fuck me, I get that I'm wrong, but my, like, the obsessive compulsive desire in my heart is I want to do all of the things. And I guess I'm just gonna have to let that go. I never did a genocide run in Undertale. I guess I'm just gonna have to let that go. You can't do all of the things unless you're insane. Yeah, like the way it's designed, that goes, you can't liberate everyone. No matter what you do, at the end of the day, 3 Nightwings are gonna stay in the downside. Oh man, you know what now what I want to do is I want to do a playthrough where all of the Nightwings go free except for the original 3 plus you, where Hedwyn, Rucky, and Jody, and you, the reader, all stay in the downside together. That'd be fun. That'd be fun to do that. And kind of depressing, but fun. Oh man. Yeah, this game's got replayability, but just, I don't know. Like, I'm not unhappy with the way it is, but I'm also like, it would be nice to peek it. Like, I want my cake and I want to eat it too. I want both. I like what they did with this, but also I want the other thing that they didn't do also at the same time. I feel like that's not unreasonable. I should be able to have both of these incompatible, contradictory desires at once. I don't know. Anyway, this game kicks ass. Oh man. I've literally just been rambling on about like, oh man, I wish there was more game. Like, damn them for orchestrating this deliberately, like, what's the right word? Not kneecap, but like this deliberately limited experience that, yeah, you have to make sacrifices, and you have to live with them, and like, man, a fucking sports game has you stare, like, I was like really feeling tense during some of those sections where I was like, how many more liberation rights are you going to have? And am I going to be able to liberate everyone I want to? Like, near the end of it, like, I was left with Hedwyn and Gilman. I hung on to them the longest, and I was like, okay, Hedwyn goes free next no matter what happens. But then what's going to go down? Like, I was so worried, like, am I going to be able to send Gilman free, or am I going to have to choose, or is it going to be like a story mandated thing where it's like, choose yourself, or the bad guy, or some other character, but I want to send Gilman. My desire to send Gilman back is stronger than your demands for narrative dramatic stakes. And again, luckily, I did manage to send everyone back, but I was really like, oh shit. I'm like, and it was even also, and when I wanted to send the Harpy back, I was like, shit, she might not have enough enlightenment, because the characters have to be leveled up a certain point before they're allowed to go free, because guess what? You don't get to leave hell if you haven't had sufficient character development yet. That's literally built in, which again reinforces the religious themes of you cannot achieve salvation if you have not sufficiently displayed penitence for your sins and an understanding of what you've committed and a desire and motivation to, alter the course of your life. Again, all of these characters are really strong. Every single character is three-dimensional. Every single character has a goal, a motivation, and they change throughout the story. Every single one. Even the ones that you don't give a shit about. And that's why it's so strong, because I love character-centered stories. I like analyzing thematics and metaphor and artistic intention, but characters are my crank. So all of these characters had depth. All of the characters behaved believably like real people. None of them ever had a moment of contrivance. All of the characters, like, you get what their major malfunction is, and they're, like, the way they change and improve and become better people is believable, and it totally makes sense. It helps that this game is shockingly lighthearted. Considering it's a literal, figurative journey through hell, shockingly lighthearted. Like, there are so many comedy moments. I think there was more, like, comedic relief in this game than there was in Bastion or Transistor put together, and those games had their kind of fun moments. This game had actual genuine jokes. This game had actual genuine, like, light-hearted, like, aw gosh gee willikers moments, There was one moment where a character literally tells you a joke, and the game and like the way they tell it was like, literally, here's the joke. Do you know why I love fishing so much? Because I hate fish. I hate fish and everything they stand for. ever since they killed my family. Literally, that's what happens. Literally, the thing I just said and did, that is what that character does. Word for word, almost. And with that goofy expression of, get it? And the narration goes, oh, he just told you a joke. Oh my fucking god. Like, there's so much, like, for a game that's thematically really heavy. Like, the story, in terms of the characters, is literally about, like, they've been exiled for eternity, and they're struggling and suffering just to get through day-to-day life, and they're longing for this freedom that, at the same time, they feel guilty about wanting, because getting that freedom means you're denying that freedom to your friends and enemies who you share no ill will towards, and also you want your friends to get their freedom too over you, and it's this really interesting conflict of interest where everyone's like, the only fair way to go about it is to go, you know what, whatever happens, be happy for everyone, right? And it is really kind of heavy and deep, and you could have been really dark. You could have been really morbid and morose and, like wallowing with it, but instead they really did make it very lighthearted and jovial, and it had a great sense of humor about it, and that is really both impressive and laudable that they, for this game's, for what the story was doing, it remained, like, lighthearted and optimistic from beginning to end. Yeah, it'd be cool to have a season mode where it's just do tournaments, and it would be nice to have like a fuck it, just social link mode where it's just doing the character development, because those were really good. And it makes me think of like how some of them would have progressed. There must be so many I can't imagine what like the flag listing, all the check marks in this game's like event system fucking is. Like what, like Headwind, he got banished because he had they're at war with the Harpies, right? And so he was in the military and he was like scouting, and this Harpy swooped down and like she totally could have killed him because like he totally wouldn't have suspected it. But she just swooped down and they just looked at each other and like literally love at first sight. Like literally both of them went, that is one sexy piece of meat right there, and they just stared at each other and they were like, yo, and then she whisked him up and carried him off, and they totally got it on, and it was super sweet and romantic. But then, you know, Romeo and Juliet, they're like two members of cultures that are at war with each other, so she had to fucking leave, and he had to go back, and he was like, I miss her, you know? And so, like, he kind of abandoned his post, and bad things happened, and that's why he got exiled. But he's like, oh, my sweetums, I want to go, I don't even know if she's still alive, you know, but I gotta go back for her. But then he's also really conflicted, because he's like, why do I deserve freedom over anyone else? Like, everyone kind of has that conflict. All the characters are just nice dudes, by the way. No one's a dick. No one on the team is a selfish asshole, which is really appreciated. And man, Heaven's just a nice guy all around, and for me, he was one of the best guys to have on the team. Like, cause he's a really good all-rounder, and depending on how you level him up and what trinkets you give him, he can just be a fucking beast. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that you get banished after you get a goal, he could have soloed a lot of those matches. But anyway, Like, you find out about his tragic backstory. That's literally a game mechanic is you have to interact with people to learn about their backstory, and I feel like you only get the opportunity to learn about their backstory if you level them up to a sufficient degree. Like, every character has, like, two stories to them. One where you find out their backstory and they become your buddy, and one where they might have a conflict with another one of the teams that you can fight, and you have to fight that team over and over with that character for them to resolve that conflict. Like, Pamela and Gilman both had that conflict. Rucky probably had that conflict, but I didn't really get a chance to explore it. Hedwyn, I feel like, didn't have that conflict. Hedwyn, I feel like, didn't have any investment in any of the other teams. So he was just all personal, like, you're learning about his backstory kind of thing. And you learn about it while you're making dinner with him, and he tells you that whole story. And then later, there's a scene where Pamela, your Harpy teammate, is like, oh, I see that someone's feeling lovesick. What's her name? Because, like, he's just sitting there and he's being a sad sack, and she's like, yeah, I know that look. You're fucking in love. What's her name? Or his name. And he's like, so-and-so. And she's like, that's a fucking Harpy name. But she's like, yeah, I know that bitch. She's cool. I never suspected a thing. Good on her keeping the secret. And then it's like, if I get out before you, I'll tell her that you're still thinking about her. And then she did get out before him the way I did it. But then I was like, that scene wouldn't have happened if I had released Pamela earlier. Like, I totally would have missed out on that scene, and what would that have meant for Hedwyn's character development, right? Or, like, maybe if I had kept Jodie around longer, maybe there would have been a scene where she found out that he's fucking the Harpies. And she's like, man, I hate me them Harpies. I'm super racist. Then she has to learn that her son, for all intents and purposes, is fucking with the Harpies. And I wonder what that would have done for her character development. And I dropped that Moon bitch, like, almost immediately. I kind of feel bad for missing out on that. Like, the full stakes of what is to be done with these characters and your overall goal at the end of the day, I feel like you didn't really get the full picture of it until after that first liberation, which is why I was like, I kind of would have gone back and done that differently. Just because, like, by its very nature, you're going to ditch some of these characters before you finish their story. Which is why I tried to hold on to the ones that, okay, I want to finish their story before letting them go, and the ones where I was like, I don't really care, I let them go, like, after getting enough. Like, I let Rucky go after he was like, yo, I kind of want to go home. Like, he literally asked for it, so I was like, okay, and I was planning to let you go anyway. And then I feel like Jodie didn't get a lot of scenes with other characters, but I learned about her backstory. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like you're good to go, right? Anyway, fucking shit. Man, this game's just really good. Like, oh man. The biggest complaint you can ever the best complaint you can ever have about a game is, man, I wish there was more of it. And I could, start a new save file, play it all over again, make different choices this time, right? See what the different variations are and variabilities. I'll do, I'll play through where none of the Nightwings go free. Play through where all but the original 3 Nightwings go free. And regardless of what ultimately happens, romance the Spirit Orb. Romance the Crystal Ball. Romance the Crystal Ball. Romance the Crystal Ball. Anyway. So, all that said, Pyre, great game. Supergiant Games, 3 for 3. Make Tizo plushies. Hashtag Pyre for Evo.